years old when his parents moved to the small, then small seaside village of Ruakaka in North 1966. He discovered the white sandy beaches and the blue Pacific Ocean. It wasn't long before he followed his brother's footsteps and became a surfer. By the age of 13, he was shaping the build of a surfboard under the watchful eye of his father, who encouraged him to develop its walk, curves, and navigation captured the key elements of his design. While we've got a long board right here, there's a beautiful green hole or in the show. I urge you all to not walk out of this place without going and see California design. Please welcome the Ruakaka Waterfall.
Thank you very much, Jim, and welcome everybody to the Auckland Art Gallery, and thanks very much for coming to listen to my design encounter about the influence of California as it relates to surfboards. And I'm very pleased to be here talking about it because right from my first mad thought that I had about making surfboards way back when I was a kid, I was very influenced by what I saw in California. So it's great to be able to talk to you all here about it now. I built my surfboards in a factory up in Ruakaka, and I've been doing that since 1983. But when I was a kid and I wanted to make a surfboard, I didn't have the flash factory with all the gadgets and all the gear and everything. I was just a kid, and I had a bedroom. So yes, I did. I made my surfboards in my bedroom, and I don't know how my mother put up with me. She was very supportive. If you can imagine the dust and the fumes that were coming out of my bedroom back in 1971, and she just somehow turned a blind eye and whipped up another batch of cheese scones. And so the other thing I'd like to mention is I've got my work colleagues here that I've worked with that have helped me build all of these surfboards. I do have a couple of historic boards with me, these two over here from the 70s and the 80s that Colin Ankovich and I bought. But when I finish my talk and we're having a look at all the boards, I have my work colleagues here and make me feel very good to have them here. Chris Last, my office administrator, is here somewhere. And where are you, Chris? Probably a little bit shy, but she's here somewhere. And she has to put up with my mess these days, and she's the one that's more likely to put up with that scones. I also have Emma Cox is here. And hopefully they look always here. But the thing about those two is that they are surfboard craftsmen. I don't want to say craftswoman in Emma's case, because I think the word craftsman tells us all a little bit about what it is they do. So have a good look at the boards while you're here and just check it out and have a look at the work that goes into them. They are handmade and individually made and are custom made. Talking about California, you can't really get to California without stopping in Hawaii. Hawaii is, as far as we're concerned, the birthplace of surfing, and the Hawaiians really enjoyed it. They all did it. It was something that evolved over the centuries, and it became a massive part of their culture. It was very sophisticated. They learned how to make surfboards from the raw materials they had, which were trees, and they learned how to use the curves that were in the trees naturally, and how to remove, the curves from the parts of the tree that they didn't need. And they learned how to make surfboards that function in the waves. So they developed their surfboard shapes to a very high level. Now, when when Europeans came to Hawaii, this is the sort of thing they saw. And I don't think that's a cliche. I think that's what they saw. They saw everybody in the water having fun riding waves on different lengths and different types of surfboards, riding different styles. Unfortunately, when the missionaries came along, the missionaries wore a lot of clothes. The Hawaiians didn't wear any. And things had to change. And surfing was frowned upon. It was discouraged, and it pretty much all but disappeared. And with it, massive knowledge base on how to design and shape surfboards disappeared as well. It wasn't until the turn of the century when Hawaii started to become developed for tourism. It seemed like a good idea to promote surfing again. And that's where California comes into it. The way that surfing got to California is that 3 Hawaiian princes were sent to Santa Cruz to go to school and get an education. And these guys missed their surfing, so they built themselves some boards and they started surfing in California. So that's how surfing actually got to California. California embraced surfing, and it's interesting that when the Californians started to make surfboards, they didn't make them out of trees as such. They went to the sawmill and bought a flat plank of timber and went surfing on it. So if you can imagine, modern surfboards kind of came from a different viewpoint, and the curves that the Hawaiians knew all about had to kind of like be redeveloped. And it took a long time for those curves to come back into surfboards. So we really lost a lot through the disappearance of surfing in Hawaii. By the time we got into the 50s, we had guys like Greg Knoll here, and that surfboard, that's the surfboard that's actually in the exhibition. You'll see that board there. It was made by Greg Knoll. And Greg was a pioneer of big wave surfing. He was a pioneer of making surfing movies, and he was a pioneer of the surfboard industry. So by the time we get into the 50s and the 60s in California, there was really a big manufacturing base in California. The Californians had kind of like evolved the methods and the materials to make surfboards. They figured it all out. And they started using redwood, and then with Hollywood, the use of balsa wood became available because they used balsa wood a lot in the props for Hollywood movies. So the surfboard builders started using balsa wood, and then at the end of the Second World War, a lot of secret materials that had been developed during the war became declassified and filtered down into industry, and surfboard makers had access to polyurethane foams and fiberglass. So the California surfboard industry worked out all the processes and how to use those materials. It kind of around about 1958 was when they started to phase out balsa wood and go to the foams and the fiberglass. These are some of the iconic labels that came up in California, and many of those businesses are still operating today. So the way that we make surfboards in Ruakaka, and the way that surfboards are made all around the world pretty much, the materials and the methods pretty much came from that California surf industry. By the time we get to the end of our design period, which the exhibition that they're showing goes from 1930 to 1965. By the time we get to 1965, surfing in California had evolved into a very slick, state-of-the-art kind of thing where the surfboards were very well crafted, and the pinnacle of surfing in 1965 in California was nose riding. And that's David Nuuhiwa, who was the #1 nose rider at the time, showing some style and flair and executing a very difficult nose ride in the critical part of the wave. Now, that's all very well, but something funny was happening in the background. And what that was, that a California surfer from Santa Barbara by the name of George Reno, he was actually a kneeboarder. He decided that it was getting a little bit crowded in California, so he decided to move to Australia. He knew about all the empty waves over there. So in 1964, George Reno moves to Australia, and he's riding this tiny little kneeboard, and he's ripping all over the waves, surfing like nobody in Australia's ever seen. Well, the Aussies couldn't believe it, and they all wanted to surf like George. So they started looking at George's equipment, and they noticed that he had these, highly evolved foil flexible fins, and he was going to places on the waves that they could only dream about. So by George moving to Australia, he basically kick-started, without meaning to be kick-started, what's become known as the shortboard revolution. And the reason that this is interesting to me is that by the year 1966, the shortboard revolution it gained so much momentum in Australia that the Aussies are on a totally different wavelength with their surfboards and their surfing to what was happening state-of-the-art in California. So in 1966, when the Californians hosted the World Championships in San Diego, and the Aussies turned up, David Llewellyn was surfing like that in the contest, and the Aussies, spearheaded by Nat Young, were riding these much shorter, much more manoeuvrable boards, and they weren't worrying about nose riding, they were worrying about being stylish, they were being aggressive, and they were trying to position themselves in the most critical part of the wave, and they were doing radical manoeuvres. And the Aussies won the event, and the world shift of power, if you like, as far as surfing goes, moved to Australia, and it's stayed there for many, many years. So there's a lot of kind of ironies in it. Because of the shortboard revolution, longboarding was kind of like, it actually went completely out of style, and the longboards disappeared, and shortboards got shorter, surfboards got shorter and shorter and shorter, and riding a longboard was no longer cool. So, by the time I got into surfing, if you rode a longboard, you were called a derby. And so not many people did. And the only place you'd really see longboards were like on the backyard at the surf club, And but at the beach where I live, we got lots of little waves. And we kind of, we didn't know we were under, we didn't know we were turkey. We just knew it was lots of fun riding the old longboards, and that's what we did. And I had a bit of a dream about, making a new one, like making a modern longboard, like, hey, that'd be cool, we could make it light, and we could do this, and we could do that, and play around with the shapes. I didn't really do anything about it until I went on a trip to Hawaii. And I saw a guy called Ben Iper. And Ben Iper was doing exactly that. One day he'd be out on a little shortboard, and he'd be surfing like the Aussies showed everybody how to do. And the next day he'd be out on a longboard, heading 10. And I thought, wow, that's just awesome. This guy does it right. That's got to be the way to go. I mean, why be stuck in one track? So I cut my world trip short, got as far as Hawaii, and headed back to New Zealand and ripped the glass off the board and made myself a longboard. And it was a very unwelcome thing to do as far as New Zealand was concerned at the time. People weren't kind of ready for that. It was like a big step backwards. So it kind of came with mixed emotions, because I thought it was a fantastic thing to do, I had a lot of fun doing it. But people couldn't get their head around it. Anyway, slowly but surely around the world, longboards did come back, because people kind of missed that sort of thing, and there are days when a longboard is the best board to have. So it's very common to go to the beach now and see longboards everywhere. And what's interesting about it is that influence in California is still there, because people that ride longboard, they like to ride the nose. They like to ride the nose, just like the Californians, showed us how to do. in the mid-60s, and the aggressive Australian shortboarding approach has been worked into the longboard scenario as well. So now the longboard does both. So it's kind of cool how it's evolved. A major influence from California, and strictly speaking, this is a little bit outside of our design theory, but it's so important, I've got to mention it. Because in the late 60s, there was another kneeboarder in California, this time from San Diego, by the name of Steve Liss. And he had very short little kneeboards with split tails, and he had two little fins on them. And they were called fish. And these boards are so different to what everybody else is riding, you couldn't help but notice. So the surfing was different. It was very fast and very spontaneous. And slowly from sort of a little local sea in San Diego, the effect of the fish went like a ripple. And it travelled up and down the California coast, it travelled to Florida, and it slowly travelled around the world. And I got kind of bitten by the fish bug. There's one of my fishes from the 70s over here that you can have a look at later on. The fish had a big influence at the time on surfing. And when I went surfing, when I went on that trip that I told you about, when I went to Hawaii, the board that I took to make was a fish. So I thought, well, fish would be the best board to take travelling. So I made myself a fish, very similar to the one over here. And unfortunately in Hawaii, I broke it into 3 pieces one day. So there I was without a board. So what did I do? I went and got myself a blank, and I smuggled it past reception. I was staying in a high-rise in Waikiki on the 11th floor, and I got this blank up in the elevator, and there I was again in my bedroom with this blank making a surfboard. So I made a board there. I had to hold it on the end of the bed with one hand and just kind of like shake it with the other hand and spin it around. I don't know how I cleaned up that mess either. Now, the influence of the fish is such that all these years later, people get together and they talk about fishes and they celebrate fishes. They're just such fantastic little surfboards that these events have sprung up around the world called Fish Fries. And the Fish Fries is a day when people just turn up at the local beach, they bring along their fish surfboard, and they all just get around and talk about it. It's not a competition, it's just a get together. And the Fish Fry, it's a worldwide phenomenon now, such as the reverence of these surfboards. And I just want to mention that we have photographer Michael Cunningham here today. Where are you, Mike? Mike's over the back there. You might want to have a chat with Mike, because Mike is hosting the first New Zealand Fish Fry. It's an international event, and it's going to be held at Waipu Cove this summer. So have a talk with Mike about that, because it's going to be a really neat thing to come along. It'll be a celebration of all the surfboards we'll be talking about today, and you'll see all that California influence. Now, the other way that the fish influence things is it kind of turned people onto the idea of surfing shorter, wider, thicker boards with 2 fins. And back to the Australians, Mark Richards saw what was happening with the fishes, and he was like, one of the leading pro surfers of the day. And he needed a board that he could adapt to competition surfing. So he took the concept of the fish and he came up with what we call a twin fin. And it was a very modern version, very high performance version of the fish. Mark Richards won 4 consecutive world championships riding a twin fin. The whole surfing world changed overnight from riding single fins to riding twin fins. Again, the result of this early Californian fish influence. Now, back in India, what that started was another revolution. It started the multi-fin revolution. And surfboards have gone on to go from single fins to twin fins to 3 fins, and currently now there's a really big movement around 4-fin surfboards. There on the screen there's a couple of modern versions of fishes and twin fins that we've made, and you'll see some boards here. This one over here is it's kind of like a fish from the 70s, if you like. It's made out of coconut wood, which was all just driftwood that washed up on my local beach during one big winter storm. And the thing with making a fish out of wood, the wood just seems to give the whole feel of the board another dimension. It just gives this fantastic ride. In California, at different times of history, there's been different characters that have done different things. In the 1940s, there was a guy called Bob Simmons, and he was in the same part of town as Steve Liss, about 20 years earlier. And Bob was an eccentric kind of a guy. He was a bit of a loner, he did things his way. He was a mathematician, and he worked all the surfboards out using mathematical equations. None of the other shapers did that, and they used to have fierce arguments about what was right and what was wrong. But Bob just did it his way. And Bob was responsible for coming up with a lot of the oils and a lot of the rail shapes, the way the curves are put together and concave bottoms. And he was the originator of the idea of using 2 fins. So Bob had this massive influence whereby even though the other shapers in California that were doing great things didn't agree with him and they didn't copy his boards, they took a lot of the design elements out of his boards and integrated them into what they did. So he had an effect that changed all surfboards. Something else that Bob Simmons did is, being a bit of a loner, he'd nip off for a surf by himself, and all surfers know what that's like. And he had a little shore breakaway where he used to go and surf, all by himself, nobody else was interested. And he didn't want to ride his 10-foot longboard there because it wasn't the right, it didn't suit the wave conditions. So he made a 6-foot version of a 10-foot board. Everybody was riding 10-foot boards except for Bob. He had a little 6-foot board. Now, the world didn't really know too much about this. Bob died, and life went on, and things, did what they did. But there was always this kind of rumour floating around about this board that might have been, and nobody was too sure. And about 10 years ago, a guy called John Elwell, who was a friend of Bob Simmons, said, yes, that board did exist, and yes, it looked like this. And he got together with some of the Californian shapers, and they recreated it, and they came up with what's called the Mini Simmons. And this is the Mini Simmons here. Very short, very wide, very flat, got 2 fins. On the screen, we've got some Mini Simmons that we've made. The one on the left's got wooden rails to give a little bit of that wooden board feel. And the other one's done with resin tint, which is one of the processes that was developed in that early California surf industry that's become very popular again now. Another influence from California from very early on, and I did mention George Greenough before and how he went to California and changed, how he went to Australia and changed everything. The other thing that he was doing was, he wasn't just riding short kneeboards, he was riding flexible kneeboards. He was working on watching fish. And he figured out that, the surfboard should be moving like the fish moves. It should be changing shape. And his fins were modelled after tuna fins. And he had the right idea. And there are a few people who have played with Flex as a result of meeting with George over the years and seeing what he was doing on his board. And one of them is an Australian called Mitchell Ray. And Mitchell's been making boards with flexible tails, right through from the 60s when he first met George to the present day. He's got it very evolved. And what it does is it gives your surfboard basically a muscle, so that as you weight your back foot to go into a turn, the flexible tail contorts, changes shape, and it allows you to go around corners tighter. And then when you come out of the turn, the reflex, the memory of the material that the tail's made out of, wants to return to its normal shape, so it snaps back into shape and propels the surfboard forward. So you get this surfboard that's got a kind of a muscle or a life of its own. And we played around with it over the years and made a few boards, and I've had 3 of them myself, and it really does work. It's just very hard to manufacture. So it's something that hasn't really caught on in a big way, but my sort of gut feeling on Nets is that one day the future of surfboard will be they will all have flexible tails, and hopefully interchangeable tails, so you can take one tail off, you know, for a certain type of surfing. You might want a tail that's more flexible or less flexible. Surfers these days, they change fins. They put different shaped fins or more flexible, less flexible fins. I think one day in the future, surfboards will have tails that are flexible and can be changed. That's just to show you a board that we were making. That's an e-board, and you can see where my hand is there that the bones get very, very thin there. As we shaped the board, we removed all the bone from the tail, and it just ended up a solid fiberglass tail that's flexible. Let's go back to the 1930s. Let's go right back to the start of our design period. California started to move to Hawaii to go surfing. They heard about the waves, and they wanted to go surfing in those waves. They took with them the flat planks that they made, you know, out of the sawmill timber that had very little contour in it, and they had trouble. As the surfing evolved, they had trouble getting those flat planks to ride in the steeper pockety waves that Hawaii had. Waves that are breaking on reefs, you know, they're hollow, and they're riding them off really quickly, and they'd stand up and try and get into these waves with their big flat and slide sideways. So this guy, John Kelly, and some of his friends, they got sick of it one day, and they were like the best surfers around, and they wanted to go surf these waves, and they were struggling, because the boards went up to it. So they had a meeting on the beach, and they went, right, they got out their axes and their door knives, and they basically shaved the tail of their surfboards down, very narrow and very curved. And what they've done, I don't know if they realise it or not, but what they've done is they've tapped into that design knowledge that the ancient Hawaiians have been using. And they put the curves back into the board in the right places. When they pedal back out and took off on those big waves, the boards just hung up in the face of the wave and stayed there, and all of a sudden they could shoot forward and ride along the wave. These boards are called hot curls because they could ride in the hot curl of the wave, so they called them hot curl. Now, what the hot curl did is it meant that all of a sudden surfers could start riding more challenging waves, bigger waves. So these boards were the start of the big wave surfing movement. They also freed the surfer up. So the surfer didn't have to stand on the tail, trying to control the board, dropping a foot in the water to steer. All of a sudden the surfer could move forward on the board and start doing other stuff. So the hot curl also was the start of what was called the hot curl movement, the hot dog movement, the hot dog style of surfing, where the surfer basically makes up his own repertoire of what he's going to do. So all of a sudden, you have surfers that were once just stuck on the back of your board, just trying to hang on to dear life. All of a sudden, you can start getting flamboyant, and you can start doing different things. The hot curl was only around for a little while, about 10 years, because as things evolve, they do, somebody put a fin on a surfboard. They got a guy called Tom Blake, another Californian. He unbolted an aluminium skeg off a water ski, and he bolted it onto a surfboard, and all of a sudden he had control and maneuverability. And there's 3 boards in that photo there, 2 of them are hot curls, no fin, and George Downing standing there with his board, he's got a fin on it. So you can see in that photo that things were changing. And what happened over a period of about 10 years, the hot curls got phased out, and surfboards with fins have basically been the main way of doing it. It's interesting, with the longboards having come back over the years, there's been a big sort of renaissance in surfboard design and craftsmanship, and a lot of the old stuff. There's been a lot of people that used to surf, a lot of nostalgia, thinking about it all, and let's do this, let's do that, remember when we had boards like that and that sort of thing. And so what's happened is shapers around the world have started going to places like the Bishop Museum in Hawaii and looking at the old boards. There's a few old boards there, the old Hawaiian boards, and discovering the curves and the shapes and having a good look. And well, none of those boards had fins. So they started to make reproductions. And out of it has come this whole phenomena of riding finless surfboards. And it's sweeping the world. There's a few different variations on it. But a Californian called Tom Wegener kind of kick-started the thing off. And I was very intrigued, because I'm a surfboard shaper, so it's kind of like, well, all of a sudden people are riding surfboards, they don't have any fins on them. How can they do that? So I had to get my head around it, and I wanted to be involved. And I thought, well, hey, what about those cocktail boards that we used to ride in the 1930s? So I thought I'd have a go at making one and see what it was like to surf it. Here's a modern day one here, and you can see that it's got the same sort of rolled V shape that the guys came up with in the 1930s. And you'll notice that I've got quite a collection of them there. And I've kind of evolved the things to the point where I've taken the 1930s concepts and I've merged it with modern ideas and just sort of tried to bring that 1930s style of surfing into the present day. And it really is a lot of fun, taking off on a wave without a fin, and it's a completely different feeling, it's a completely different sensation, and who knows where we'll go with it. But there's a nice collection of cocktails over there of different lengths that you can have a look at. So I'm going to be, that's the end of my talk. I'm going to be hanging around for a while. So feel free to come and ask me any questions. Feel free to browse around and have a look at the board. Thank you very much for coming.
Roger forgot to mention that he does take a deposit and a couple of blokes here look like they've been working hard. Talks coming up at 1 o'clock on those incredible case analysis in our auditorium. Just go along and follow it all, get upstairs to sign up going in. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of the 5 o'clock.